So I just saw the movie Planned Parenthood. Oh, sorry, take two. So I just saw the movie Unplanned, and it was so wonderfully done. It was just amazing. The story behind Abby Johnson is just incredible. The story behind all the children who are aborted all throughout the world, and many in North America, of course, thousands and thousands. Abby Johnson herself said that she feels she is responsible for at least 22,000 abortions at that one clinic in Texas where she lived. So if anyone wants to go see this movie, it's in the theaters here in Dartmouth until the 16th or 18th of July. I would really recommend going to see it. It is just something that's so well done and so powerful. So if you want to see what really happens in the abortion industry, I would recommend going to see this movie. If you want to show your young teenage children, nieces, nephews, what pregnancy is really all about. It's about life. And when you bring a life into the world, it starts in the womb, because as Catholics, we know life begins at conception and ends at natural death. And to change anything in between is no less than a murder. It really is. It's not something that we can just pretend and like it's just a blob of cells and discard. So we have to really be careful with our bodies, with our lives. And in fact, when you really think of it, this movie is really all about, if you think of the teachings of St. John Paul II and the theology of the body, and then you go and watch this movie. This movie should really be shown to all young people who are going to be confirmed in the Catholic Church. It really brings home the fact that life is sacred. It's not something that should just be lightly tossed away, and for what? Somebody else's objective, somebody else's narrative that we're getting sucked into as a society, that the woman's right to choose and all this stuff is just a bunch of baloney. It's not about the women's right to choose at all. It's about a movement towards death, and we live in a culture of death, and that makes it we have responsibility as Catholics to speak up against this gross injustice to the unborn. And in Canada, we just don't do that anymore. We've kind of washed our hands of it because we don't have any legislation. There is no law in Canada governing abortions. People don't really realize that. We just don't even talk about it anymore. It's just like a done deal. Well, 40 Days for Life happens every year here in Halifax. If you want, you can go. I think it's in May, the end of May, that the 40 Days for Life marches on Parliament Hill. It really is something that people should take part of. Sadly, I have never done it myself, but after seeing this movie and seeing how prayer affects, prayer obviously affects the outcome of life, and this movie really brings that home. So we can be part of this movement of life, or we can be complicit in this, this world of death, essentially. I guess the choice is up to us as Catholics. What are we going to do? We don't hate anyone for having an abortion, and in fact, my story is I almost had an abortion when I was in a relationship with someone before I was married. I was only 22 years old, and I I was there. I was at an abortion clinic in Ontario, and they gave me that pill. They gave me the little pill of death, I called it, and I went home and I bawled my eyes out, and in that moment of despair, the phone rang, and it was my sister, Kathy, who called me. She called me from New Brunswick, and I was in Ontario, and she said, Wanda, are you okay? And I said, well, yes, everything's okay, but she didn't believe me anyway, so I ended up spilling the beans. I ended up saying, I'm pregnant. And she said, what? She goes, there's a moment of silence, actually. She said, you mean I'm going to have a little niece or a nephew? And she was all excited. I wasn't very happy about it, but she was all excited. And then in that moment, I knew I couldn't go through with the abortion. And let me tell you what counseling did for me. I went into the doctor's office, and the doctor, not someone who owns a clinic or has part, ownership in anything. So I can imagine the pressure on these poor women going into these clinics in the States. But I was in a doctor setting in Ontario, and the doctor looked at me and said, well, you're young. You have your whole life ahead of you. You're 22 years old. Here's the number of an abortion clinic. This doctor, performs abortions. And so I went there on the assigned day, and gave me an exam and gave me a pill to take, that I was to take the morning or the night before the actual abortion. And because of my sister calling me, and in fact Kathy said, I've been praying all day and your face keeps coming up. So that's the power of prayer. God intervened for me through my sister's prayer, saved my son's life. So the way I see it, and I've always said it, my sister's prayer saved 2 lives that day, because if she hadn't called me, who knows if I would have. I hope I wouldn't have gone through with it, but had I gone through with it, I don't think I could have lived with myself. And so God saved 2 souls that day, and I thank God for that moment. So this movie really, really affected me personally. I did not go through with the choice of an abortion, but thousands of women do, and you can't help but being affected by it, no matter what the other side says, no matter what the narrative says, and as Catholics, we should be standing up and talking about this more often. And just to give you a little sense of what that might look like, it's funny because in the last month and a half or 2 months, I've had opportunity to actually talk about abortion in places that I never expected to talk about abortion. The first time was at work, and it was really emotional, and I felt, it was emotional for me afterwards, but during the conversation, I hope and pray that the lady that I was talking to, she actually watched some videos that I had sent her, and she came over and she said she had no idea. So I was glad about that. The second one, and I'll be more specific in this story, but the second one was, I was at a hairdresser. I was at the getting my hair cut, and the young lady that was cutting my hair said, she wanted to be a lawyer, and she was asked in her interview at Dell, what recent news item was she passionate about, and she said she was passionate and she would strongly defend women's rights for reproductive rights for their bodies, rights to choose, make their own decisions for their bodies. And I said, that's interesting. I said, why that right? Why would you say that right now? And she said, well, because of what they're doing in Alabama, making abortion illegal after the heartbeat. And so I said to her, I said to myself first, okay, how am I going to handle this? I want a good haircut. I said, no, I said, what that law in Alabama was directly a direct response to what was happening in New York City, or New York State, where they just passed a law saying you can have an abortion right up to the moment of birth. And she said, well, what do you mean? And I said, so I told her, I said, even if it's causing you mental distress, you can, right up to the moment of birth, you can ask for an abortion and get an abortion like a viable baby, like within Like 1 minute, in 1 minute, you could kill your baby. Like 1 minute it's inside the womb and it's alive and the baby's alive, and then the next minute she's outside the womb and she's dead. So it's really quite disturbing what's happening. So it's like a snowball effect. So you have the morning after pill, then you get some chemicals, and that doesn't work, you're too far along. Then you get, an abortion where they essentially just suck the baby out of you with a tube, and then after that it's too big, so I don't even want to go into it, it's so disgusting. But you see where I'm going with this. It just gets gross. It just gets worse and worse and worse. So anyway, as Catholics, I think you should watch this movie. And if you don't get to watch this movie, Abby Johnson gives tons of lectures online. She has videos out. A lot of people support her in her effort to expose what's happening at these abortion clinics in the States. And mind you, like I said, we live in Canada. We don't have these massive amounts of Planned Parenthood clinics, but abortions do happen, and prayer does make an effect. And so we should be praying for the lives of babies, for the lives of mothers and fathers, to choose life instead of death. And on that, I am going to say goodbye. Like I said, the movie was really well done. I hope in the week that it's out that people will go watch it. But as Catholics, keep the faith, talk about it, don't be shy, do it respectfully, do it with love, and do it with prayer as well. And God will give us the grace that we need to have those difficult conversations with people we love, and with coworkers, and with friends, because we are definitely not the majority right now. So thank you, take care, God bless, and talk to you next time.